Hey friends, Dave Hagan here. What's better to use, a credit card or a debit card? That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to the financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Today we're going to talk about credit versus debit cards. I've got a couple friends here in the studio. As always, Nick Appel, our announcer, and Brian Reed is here with us today. Welcome, Brian.
How's it going, Dave? Thanks for having me.
Always good to have you here. So one of the questions that I always get is, what's better, a credit card or a debit card? And of course, the first answer is neither. Go cash. But a lot of people use these, and I think it's important to compare and contrast the two and understand them and decide for yourself what's best for you. So the first thing I want to talk about is the debit card. You know, when you have a debit card, it looks like a regular credit card. It's a piece of plastic, or, you know, if you got a super duper one, it's made out of metal, but you carry it around in your wallet. It takes money out of your account. It takes money out of your pocket. You swipe and you use the PIN, you type in your PIN, and it takes the money right out of your account. Right then and there, or maybe it clears that night, but it's out of your account. There's an estimated 680 million debit cards in the United States, according to the website Wallet Hub and SEC filings by MasterCard and Visa. 680 million debit cards. A lot of people use these. A lot of people swear by these. In fact, I've heard folks that are very big advocates of debit cards because you're taking money out of your own account. You're not putting money on a charge account and paying it later. So folks with credit problems, low credit scores, will get a debit card. The nice thing is there's no interest involved in this. It's your money. You're just taking money out of your account. Sometimes there's a transaction fee, sometimes not, but no interest at all. Now, a debit card doesn't help your credit rating because you're not really running up any credit. There's no rewards typically. Everyone's chasing the air miles or the cash back or the, whatever you want, but you're not getting any rewards. A lot of people will say it's just as safe as a credit card, but it seems to me, and this is just my opinion, if the money's already out of your account, you're going to have a lot less leverage dealing with a fraudulent withdrawal as opposed to a credit account where it's charged on your account and you're not going to pay it at the end of the year if you dispute it. Now, I know people are going to say there's laws in place to protect debit cards and credit cards equally. Just saying. As a lawyer, I know that possession is the beginning spot of any negotiation that you're going to have with anybody. And it seems to me, once the money's out of your account, once they got your money, you're not in as good a spot. So that's what a debit card is. Now, to contrast, a credit card you charge, it goes on your account, and you pay, hopefully, at the end of every month. You just swipe. There's no PIN. Now you don't even have to swipe. You can just put it in the little slot and your chip will read it, or you can connect it to your phone, and your phone interacts with the credit card, and you just go beep, and you've paid for that. So
I'm sorry, Dave. How do you go?
It's a beep.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I practice that a lot. You could tell, right? You're going, wow, that's a practice technique there. And so it's a lot easier to use, and you're using someone else's money for 20, 30 days, I guess. But there's an estimated 636 million cards just by the four majors in the United States. What are the majors? Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and Discover. Those are considered the big four. But if you look at all of the credit cards together, there's well over a billion cards. So they are more predominant than the debit cards. The debit card use, or the number of debit cards at least, grew substantially until a couple years ago, and I think those are starting to recede a little bit. But a lot of people were using debit cards, whether they were debit out of the account or even prepaid cards. People were charging up a card and then reducing off an account. So credit cards are good though because they help you with your credit rating because you are incurring debt. And we've said over and over again that a credit rating shouldn't be even close to one of your top 3 financial objectives. But if you can do something that helps your credit rating and you're doing it in a very conservative way, I guess that doesn't hurt. Rewards, you can get rewards, whether it's airline miles. If you get 6 billion, miles, you can fly across the United States. Some people like cash back. We've talked about that in prior podcasts. The cash that you get back isn't significant, but if you're otherwise getting nothing back, I guess something's better than nothing. They're safe because there is a dispute process, and in most states, your liability for fraudulent charges is next to nothing. Now you're going to pay interest. If you don't pay on time, you're going to pay interest. If you pay late, you're going to pay a late fee. If you're not a good shopper or user of credit cards, you're going to pay a membership fee. And we've talked about this in years past. So these are very different, the debit card compared to the credit card. A credit card, you've got to have pretty good credit. Debit card, not. So there's a lot of difference between the two. So what's better? What's better? Well, some say debit because you don't have the temptation to run up credit. Some people say credit card's better because it's easier, it's maybe a little safer, helps with your credit rating. Maybe you get, rewards or something like that. For me, personally, I think that if someone is paying off every single month with an automatic deduction or has a lot of discipline, credit card, I kind of like that, especially someone that's going to go on the internet once or twice a month and see what they've put on that account so that they're not going crazy. It's real easy to use a credit card and then not realize how much is built up over a period of time. But if you're looking at that, if you're tracking that data can be downloaded and directly inputted into your Quicken program so that you can track what you're doing. I kind of like that, although I'm not a big advocate of one or the other. I like getting small rewards, and we've talked about this in past episodes. Rather than playing a game with a big corporation about which cash back you're getting for what category for what month and what bonus you're getting for moving, I like something pretty vanilla, something like 1.5 cash back on any purchase at all. So I'm not worried about the rotating favorite category for the couple months, or I'm not worried about is it 1% or 2%, or is there a cap or a limit? I'm a busy person, and frankly, I don't think I'm going to outthink a major corporation in terms of how I use that. And if they have to give me 1.5 back on everything, period, I kind of like that. Although, if I was ever going to travel, I've been thinking more and more, Brian, about this black card with the lounge in 1,000 airports around the world, right?
You and this black card.
It's metal and it's got 41 patents.
It's shiny and it's heavy.
And it's got carbon fiber in it. Oh, my goodness sakes.
41 patents.
Yeah. What was the membership fee?
$500?
$500 a month.
$500.
Or, not a month, a year. $500 a year. Ouch. So you give a lot of your savings back. But, something bland, something vanilla, something that you can carry around. I like that. I like that a little better than a debit card. I like the thought of it paying every month. I like the fact that would build up your credit a little bit. But if you're the kind of person that's going to go nuts, don't get a credit card. Get the debit card. Those are equally good, equally valuable. I just shade a little bit to the credit card. What do you think, Brian?
Well, maybe there's also the amount that you're spending monthly, because a lot of these debit cards do have a keep the change program.
Yeah.
Which is, a great way to throw, $5 extra into your savings account every day, which, over the course of a month, all right, that's another $150 that's in there.
Yeah.
Over the course of a year, you're over 1,000.
Yeah. No.
So there is a benefit.
Yeah.
You can increase your savings that way, versus the credit card. Okay, you're going to get value out of these, the points, but what does that translate to cash-wise?
Well, remember we said, hey, if you're putting $4,000 a month on your credit card, which hopefully you're not, but if you are, and you're getting 2% back, that comes to like $1,000 a year, which if you're really putting $4,000 on your card and paying it every month, which is one of the fundamental assumptions, $1,000 at the end of the year isn't going to seem like a lot to that kind of a spender. But if you travel a lot, maybe, or if you spend a lot, maybe, or if you're able to put all the expenses of a business on a card, maybe. But you got to pay attention to it, and it's got to fit into your overall plan, and you got to be able to handle that. Because what you can't do is miss a payment. What you can't do is start to carry it over, because human nature is such that it'll build up, and they count on that. That's how they're making a lot of their money. That's one of their revenue sources. Membership fees, merchant fees, and interest and late payments. That's where they're making their money, and that's great if you own stock in Visa or MasterCard, but it's not good for our individual listeners' pocketbook, and they've got to be really careful if that's what they're going to do. I don't know. I think that's very interesting. I've found it really interesting the last couple of months when we've been talking about these different kinds of credit cards, just to see what's out there and kind of study them. And of course, now when I see the pitch and the promotion on TV, it makes me even sicker to go, wow, they're really taking advantage of people. But, they have their place if people are going to take care of them and have an appropriate place in their financial plan. So anyway, that's our read on credit versus debit cards. This is David Hagan, and you're listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on the road to financial success. If you'd like Dave to answer any of your questions, email them to dave@davidrhagan.com. If you like the podcast, you can subscribe to the podcast by hitting the subscribe button in your app. You will automatically get a reminder each time Dave uploads a new episode. Or you can use the app to share this episode with your friends and family. Let's listen in now as Dave answers some emails.
Hey, today Brian is going to read the emails. So, Brian, you've got a fist of emails there in front of you. What do you got?
I do, Dave. Here we go with our first one. Hi, Dave. My wife and I have some equity in our home now that its value has gone back up. The house is worth $600,000, and we have a $300,000 mortgage. Okay, that's pretty nice.
Nice.
We would like to put that equity in the house to work for us. So we were thinking about taking out a second mortgage and putting that money into a stock account. Hopefully we can make that money grow or earn interest on it. What do you think, Roger and Susan?
Oh, this is easy. No, don't do it. Resist. I understand that you want to make that equity work for you, but by taking it out and putting it in the market, you're taking a lot of risk. First, let's think about what kind of interest rate you've got to get on that investment to make it worth your while. If let's say your house note is 4%, or the loan that you're going to get is 4%. Well, you've got to make 8-9% in the market to break even, because you're going to have to pay tax on that, either at a capital gains rate or an ordinary income rate, and you've got to factor that in. So you're always going to be chasing, this number. Now, admittedly, the stock market's returned 11, 12, something like that % over the last 40 years. And you could have made some money in the market if you hit it right, especially if you're out of the market 3 times that I can think of for a couple of years. But if you're sitting there and riding it for the long term, yeah, you might make 11, 12, but you could also hit the timing wrong and lose some money. And, that's my second concern. The first concern being the interest rate that you've got to get's pretty good. You got to have, 7-8% every year to take up for the tax and to break even. So I don't know if you're going to make that much money. The second concern that I have is, you could lose a piece of that money. I saw people lose a lot of money in the dot-com bubble. I saw a lot of people lose a lot of money in the big recession. And wow, if you take the money out of the house and you lose it, or some significant portion of it, now you've just increased the mortgage. Now you've just increased the big boulder on the side of your back that you're going to carry for a number of years. And really, your goal should be to pay off that house as soon as possible. So yeah, I think you're taking a lot of risks. Now, the irony of this is, My wife and I did this exact same thing a number of years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And we did okay. Just barely, but we did okay. We didn't lose money. We made a couple bucks. It wasn't the big watershed event that, we thought it was. We were young and many would say foolish. We would like to say optimistic. And it worked out okay for us. But you know what? We were lucky. I wouldn't recommend it again. I'd look at some other things, trying to save more money, trying to pay that house off as soon as possible, making sure that retirement's full up and that you're taking full advantage of those kinds of things, and making those things work for you rather than sacrificing a place where you could potentially live for free the rest of your life if you can get that paid off. That's an interesting answer because I didn't follow my own advice, but now that I'm a little further down the line than most, my opinion's different.
Is this one of those do as I say, not as I did answers?
It absolutely is.
Look, we were morons. We got lucky. Don't do it.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of things in life that come out that way. And you think, wow, but for the grace of God went I. But, when you've been around a little longer, you become, I like to think, a little wiser, a little more conservative, a little more measured in what you think you might do, and
a little grayer. Actually, no, you just have the white hair.
I'm just all gray. It's all going on. So, I'd like to say that's that much wiser, but my wife would tell you different. So, what else you got?
All right, now we've got another one here from Steve, who's saying, "Dear Dave. A few years ago, I bought a car and agreed to make payments for 5 years. Now, with 3 years left, the car is worth less than the balance on the loan." There we go. What makes the situation worse is I recently changed jobs to do something I really like, but it pays less. I really need to get out of these car payments. So I went to a car dealership, and they told me that this would be no problem. I could simply trade in the car, and they would wrap the new loan into a loan on the new car. This seems like a good way to fix my problems. Any thoughts?
Hey, no problem. Just no problem at all. You're going to have a bigger car payment. This is a fool's errand. Don't proceed with this. The problem, and we start with the initial premise, is financing a depreciating asset. And that's the first problem, Steve. And it's easy for me to sit here and say that, but if I can get more and more people to buy cars for cash, I'd feel so much better about that. A car will depreciate. It'll be less than the balance. You can't just take the car back to the bank. If you do, they call it, at least in California, voluntary repo, and they're going to take it down to the car auction and sell it. And they're going to get way less than it's even worth. And then the outstanding portion of the loan that's unpaid is called a deficiency. And now they're going to sue you for that. You're going to have to pay it, negotiate it, do something to deal with that. And most people walk around with cars that are just barely breaking even, but people who went big initially, who didn't put down payments initially, are going to be upside down. So what they do is they, on paper, pay off your loan, take the car back, pay off the loan, and that deficiency they wrap into the new loan. So the loan that you would get to buy the new car has an additional amount based upon the old bad deal. So now you've just compounded the deficiency and made it worse. And almost by definition, not always, but almost always, your payment's going to go up. So they haven't done you any favors. They've just made you step in two poops instead of one.
But they've made a sale.
Oh, well, yeah, sure, yeah. They've made a sale. They've made the financing company happy.
Works out great for them.
Yeah. So what are some things you can do, Steve? Well, I mean, I guess you could figure out what the car's going to bring if you sell it on Craigslist or something like that, because if you do the work to sell it on Craigslist, you'll get more than a dealer will pay you, or more than one of these places that'll pay you that buy cars back. Figure out what the deficiency is, save it up, and then when you sell it, you walk into the bank with the pink slip and say, here's the money on the purchase, here's my deficiency, I want you to clear title and give it to the new buyer. That's a good way to do it, but you got to pay money to get out of your deal, and that's always unpleasant. You could just turn it in and suffer the deficiency. But your credit's going to get beat. You're going to have a deficiency. They're not going to sell it for as much as you could if you sell it on Craigslist, assuming that it's in reasonable shape, because it's not being sold at the auctions downtown. And then try and negotiate the deficiency. But once you turn the car in, you've lost all your leverage. You don't have possession. They don't have any incentive to sell it for the highest, most responsible price. And you're going to end up paying more. So I wouldn't do that. Another thing you could do would be just continue to just take the pounding and get out of it, finish the payment. And if you're buying it, it's going to be worth something at the end, and you can flip that over and get another car for the amount that, this car is worth at the end, by selling your car, getting a newer car, and then start saving up for the next car. I'd like to see people saving up for the next car rather than paying off the current one. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Now, Dave, I know that there are lease swapping websites where if you have a leased vehicle and you want out, you can put it up there and somebody agrees to come in, take over the lease payments, small fee. Do you know if there's anything similar to that for a purchased vehicle? Any websites like that where you're making payments, you own it, but you're just wanting someone else to come in and take it?
I mean, it's an interesting concept, but at least with lease swapping, at the end you're going to have nothing. You just turn the car in. Mm-hmm. So someone's going to pick up the balance of your payments. Here, if someone takes over your deal in a car and you're upside down, they'd be picking up a deal where they would owe more money than the car's worth potentially. I don't know why anyone would do that. I'm not aware of any site that does that, but it's an interesting concept. I was looking just recently at Lease Swap, and it looks like a great concept, but what you can see from the leases is everyone's trying to get out of these really expensive leases and get some other person to pick up and pay. And
wait a minute, I'm pretty sure you just said chump.
I know.
Right there.
Is that a legal term? But
yeah, that's in Black's dictionary.
Yeah, lease payments that are like $1,200, $1,500, $1,700 a month. Who does that? I mean, I don't care if it's a Rolls Royce. Who does that? That's crazy to me. So. Anyway, that's what I would do in a situation like that. Tough spot to be in. It's easy to sit here and talk about it and say, hey, don't do it. Once you're in it, it's tough. But hopefully this will serve as a lesson or some information for other listeners not to get stuck in that kind of a jam. So that's all we have time for today. Tune in next time. I want to talk about side hustles and the new gig economy. Should be interesting. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on the road to financial success. If you'd like Dave to answer any of your questions, email them to dave@davidrhagan.com. Until next week, this is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.